Okay, so the previous video I made led me to want to talk about liberals and false empathy. I think this is a huge problem on the left in general, and I think another creator by the name of Roz Galore touched on it to an extent. But what I'm talking about is liberals that support niche causes, and this is especially people that are wealthier or what they call the professional managerial class, so people that work in NGOs, professors, people that work basically for a salary, but they work in high prestige positions that are not labor intensive, right? So a lot of liberals adopt this false empathy. And to me, part of it is, yeah, some of these people are really empathetic, but a lot of them actually don't really care too much or care too much for working class people or even middle class people. And the way they kind of cover that is latching onto niche groups to use that as an expression of their empathy, specifically because they don't have to interact with these people all the time in real life. So I think one of the best examples of this false empathy that some liberals have was actually the George Floyd situation. So George Floyd, let me preface this by saying the way he died was 100% unfair. The fact whether he was writing forged checks or he was high or whatever, what we saw in that video to me did not require the response that was had in terms of choking him out like that in broad daylight for the world to see, right? Because it was filmed. However, where I have an issue with these liberals that have this false empathy is a lot of them would not want a George Floyd living in their neighborhood. They wouldn't want that type. If a George Floyd moved into their neighborhood, they would be calling the police on him all the time. But because they are so in love, they have this narcissistic almost attachment to being empathetic because they like what it says about them, not necessarily because they like helping other people. A lot of them latched onto the George Floyd thing as a show of like, wow, am I not progressive? Am I not such a good person? If even I, this liberal, wealthy, upper class or upper middle class, I don't want to put a race on it, but it's usually white, not always, but whatever, put any race you want. If even I, with all the privilege and all of the good things I have going for me, can find empathy in this black guy that was commissioning a petty theft and got choked out like an animal on social media for the world to see, if even I can be empathetic, what does that say about me and my humanity? That's what a lot of the George Floyd stuff was giving to me. And especially was solidified when the defund the police thing came. So defund the police, I know it's a catchy phrase and a sentiment for demilitarizing the police. I get that 100%, and I'm in support of demilitarization of the police. However, a lot of people that fit the bill of this professional managerial class were touting, oh, defund the police, but it's easy for them to say because they don't have to live with the consequences of lack of police enforcement and lack of order in their neighborhoods. Like I said, take the George Floyd situation, especially the protests that happened as a result of it. A lot of people were in favor of these protests and the striking back, but it's easy to do when it's not happening in your neighborhood. Like the defund the police thing, like I said, a lot of neighborhoods that are have heavy crime, they're not being policed efficiently enough. So let's say you live in a neighborhood where there's 90% of the people are law-abiding citizens. They keep their head down, they go to work. 10%, which is actually a high percent of the people, are engaged in crime, be it petty theft up to violent gang type of crime. If you defund the police, don't you know that effectively you're leaving the 90% of the people that are surviving to the will of the criminal element? How is that a humane and a thing or a thing that a good person would do? No, that is not effective. But because they don't have to live that way, it is very easy for them to make these arguments because they don't have to live with the consequences of that. To kind of like give you an idea of where I'm coming from, I think you guys should read a book by the title of Virtue Hoarders. It was written by Catherine Liu, who is a professor at UC Irvine, and she talks about the professional managerial class and basically how this class of people, which is basically your professors, your medical doctors, basically the people that make their living through but they have like jobs that require a degree or not that much physical labor. But basically, a lot of people that comprise this PMC class, a lot of them have abdicated their responsibility to actually ensuring that life is good or equitable for people that are working class, working poor, or middle class, and instead of politicking and doing research on effective strategies to actually help all Americans based on class, they latch onto either individuals, like in the case of George Floyd, or small niche groups, like I said before, like transgender rights, Black Lives Matter, Native American rights, which all of these things are important, don't get me wrong, but they basically balkanize all of these different entities and give lip service and say, well, I'm a good person because I gave lip service to that, but they won't actually put their neck on the line to strategize or to advocate for policies that are actually helpful for these people economically and will actually help their condition. So this is what I mean by this false empathy. Yes, a lot of people on the left are empathetic naturally, but a lot of these people kind of use their empathy as a shield for the things that they want to cover up about themselves. So like if the school system is failing, they'll say, oh my goodness, like all children matter and all of them deserve an equal opportunity. Meanwhile, they pull their kids out of public school. They flee to private schools. They flee to the suburbs. They flee to wherever they can live and maximize the progress and everything for their children while leaving kids that are less fortunate to wallow. And instead of advocating for, no, we need to reform the school system so that it works for all children, just about all children, and makes it better, they won't do that. They'll just take their tax dollars and run away and become basically a entity onto themselves, right? So yes, tell me what you think. I have a lot of thoughts on this, actually.